Okay, and joining me today for today's podcast out of West Perth, he's tall, he's a big body, he's an inside mid, he looks like Prince Charming, he's a leader, it's Kane Bevan. Kane, how are you going?
Hey mate, thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on. Now, I want to start off with a bit of chat about, I guess, your junior footy and especially your junior state footy, because you're one of, I'd say, a handful of blokes this year who have been there since, is it 12s for you?
Yeah,
like
state 12s, yeah.
Straight all the way through. It's a good crop this year. What's it like, I guess, going through from 12? I mean, you know nothing else except going through from 12s, but to be in the state program from 12s to now, how does that look, I guess, reflecting back on all that?
Yeah, I suppose it is a little bit like strange seeing how many blokes did come through from state 12s because obviously it's a very young start. And I suppose you probably wouldn't pay much attention to a kid making the state 12 side and thinking, oh yeah, maybe they're a chance of getting drafted. But to see there's a few this year, I suppose it's just, it just shows that we've been good since we were young. We've come through the program together, which has been really good. So, yeah, we've made a few really good mates from that. So, yeah, it's been really good.
Yeah, and I guess to be, because when you're 12, I mean, for you, it'd obviously be completely different. But for me, when I'm 12 playing footy at like Kenwick down the road, like everyone sucks. The people you think are like gods still probably suck. Like you don't even realise state footy is a thing at that age. When you're 12 and you're playing state footy, are you just immediately like the coolest bloke at school and like at your local club? Are you just immediately like God to everyone else?
Yeah, I mean, you rate your work a little bit.
Yeah.
I mean, like you make the state 12s and you think, yeah, I'm on here.
Yeah, like this is as good as it gets.
6 years away.
Like when you're like 10, it's always the fastest kid gets all the girls.
Yeah.
Well, if you're playing state footy at 12, like how many women are in your, what is it at 12, like Skype DMs at that stage? Just trying to hit you up. Yeah, the kick DMs. Oh, that's a throwback. Now, another thing that's been spoken about a lot of your game, because I guess you've been earmarked a bit for a while about this draft, but people have been speaking about with you your transition from being a key position player, key back, I believe, more so than key forward, but key position to inside mid. When you hear that you're going to be making that transition into inside midfield, I guess what are the thoughts that are going through your head? Because everyone wants to be a midfielder, but to actually be told, we want you to go into the midfield, how does that feel?
Yeah, I suppose it was a little bit nerve-wracking at first, I reckon. I was pretty comfortable down back there for a bit and then also being able to go forward as well and play as a key position player. But I suppose I'm at a bit of an awkward height to be a key position. I'm 192 centimetres, not really to be a key position these days, you need to be 195 plus.
Yeah.
So, yeah, speaking to the coaches, they thought, there's a little bit of scope to try me in the midfield. I'd never really played there before at all. And I was excited to take on the role and I've really enjoyed it since going in there.
Yeah, and in preparation for that, because obviously it seems like it's been a pretty smooth transition, but there would have been a lot of work behind the scenes. What was it that you were mainly focusing on, I guess, the main aspects of your game that you really had to work on to be ready to play in the midfield?
Yeah, I suppose a lot of it was the stoppage work because obviously I wasn't attending many stoppages and stuff like that, playing key position. So, yeah, just watching a lot of vision and stuff of AFL players and then learning off blokes who I'm training with every day. Just trying to take in as much as I could and then try to apply to the games. And it didn't happen straight away. Like I definitely had a few quiet games there, like to start in my first few Colts games there. Started to get the feel of it. And then once I got a little bit of confidence, just really grew from there.
Yeah. Now I'm going to call back to my local days, and this is obviously on a much smaller scale. But you go into the midfield, it's a lot faster game. I can recall one time when I was like 17 going into the midfield at Kenwick and just being like, yeah, this will be easy, just like running off the bench. And I like immediately just got overrun and like ran circles by everyone. Like when you go into that stoppage for the first time in a competitive situation, is it like, I don't know, is it like nosebleeds for you? You're like just taken aback or shocked by the pace of the game? Or was there anything to being a midfielder that really you didn't expect at all?
Yeah, you definitely notice that it's a lot more tiring. It's a lot more, you need that aerobic capacity to cover the ground a bit more. So, yeah, the first few games in there. And then on top of that, you're always bodying up at the stoppages. That takes away from your energy as well. You're pushing off, trying to get to your spots in the stoppage, trying to get to the hit zone. So, you get knackered. I was knackered my first few games, but then as I got cut over the preseason, then the last preseason as well, just really focusing on fitness, which I suppose makes it a lot easier when you actually get to game day.
Yeah, and having that experience as a key position player, as you say, you're obviously a bit undersized for the AFL. They just want them taller and taller these days. But is that something you feel like in the future you could present to an AFL club, being like a key defender or a key forward at stages?
Yeah, 100%. I reckon definitely I'd be happy to go back or forward. I think I have the ability to do that as well. Even if it's not key position, like these days, the third tall down back is super important. I think I have that ability to, intercept mark and read the play and be really good from the half back line. So I think definitely there's scope that I can move back there if need be.
Yeah. Now, as I said, you've obviously been earmarked for this draft. Being from 12s, you performed so well in those years. People are saying, watch out for Kane Bevan in this draft year. I can recall this time last year, Jackson Pryor, West Perth boy, I was having a chat with him in here, and he said, you got to look out for Kane Bevan next year, like absolute gun. Everyone's saying this. I'm sure you're hearing a bit of that, and people are saying, you're not saying it, but everyone's saying, oh, he's a guarantee for the draft. He's a lock. When you hear all that, how do you go about mentally and physically preparing for this year?
Yeah, it does add that layer of pressure, I suppose. Obviously, being in those state teams from a young age, lots of people expect lots of things from you, and I suppose they don't see the work you're putting in. They just expect it to, they just expect to see your name called out at the end of this month. So, yeah, definitely a lot of pressure, but I suppose having that good support network around you. And this year I made a real emphasis not to, read all the articles and all that stuff and just really try to stay away from it. And I think that's been really good for me. I just haven't paid much attention to it, because then you start reading that stuff and then you sort of have to start comparing. It starts making you compare yourself to the other blokes as well. So, yeah, I've just been trying to stay focused, just stay in the moment and, not look too far ahead.
Yep. And in terms of the specific aspects of your game that you were working on the most, what was it that you were really looking to improve on to be as ready as possible for this year?
Yeah, I think it was still definitely working on that midfield craft. So, yeah, that was a big one. And to do that, I need to have a big pre-season with my fitness as well. So, lots of running, and then also trying to put a little bit of size on as well in the gym. So I think, yeah, just my midfield craft, and then, the aerobic capacity as well. Yeah.
Now, there's obviously a lot of things that, people just see little things about you, like your height as a midfielder, and they start frothing it. They go, that's great. Clubs are going to love that. And another thing that you have that people are going off about is your leadership abilities. You're a captain, you're a leader. Being that leader, I guess, how did you feel when you were voted in as captain to be the leader of West Perth? Was it something that you had, or maybe not expected, but felt like you were the right fit for, or was it something you felt you had to make some slight changes to who you were as a result of?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't always been the best leader. I've always been I'm a pretty quiet bloke, to be honest, pretty shy, doesn't talk a lot. But I think, yeah, going into this year, I definitely it was a goal of mine to, lead the side and be the captain. And, yeah, that's not something that you can sort of plan to happen. You sort of have to earn the trust of your teammates and the respect. And luckily, I was able to do that, and they voted me in, which I'm super proud of. But yeah, it definitely hasn't come naturally to me. I'm more of a lead through example, and sort of that type of leader, rather than be the loudest bloke out on the track and just yelling all the time. I like to say stuff when I need to that has purpose, rather than just sort of chirping nonsense all the time. But yeah, more of a lead by example leader, I'd say.
Yeah, and I guess just as a result of that, do you feel like you've become even more off the field, a more vocal person, more, I guess, engaged, louder as a result of that? Like, you felt like you've had to, maybe the new blokes, the younger blokes have come in, take them under your wings a little bit, or is it sort of just same old Bev situation?
Yeah, no, I definitely think it's brought me out of my shell a little bit. You're sort of exposed to, having to talk, even in front of people during, like at awards nights and stuff like that, address the group and stuff. So, yeah, it's definitely, helped me with my sort of social side and coming out of my shell a little bit.
Yeah. Now, we'll look at state champs, because obviously heading into it this year, you're averaging a tick over 27 touches a game. You were dominating WAFL Colts. It was far too easy for you, obviously, but you go into the state champs and it was a stacked midfield. Our midfield was stacked, and it maybe didn't reflect on the performances, but you look at the names, Elijah, Ruben, Darcy, Steely, all these blokes who can go in the midfield as well. Outside of that, knowing coming into that you're not going to be a full-time midfielder, you're probably going to have to show your wares across the board. How do you feel preparing for that state champs, knowing you're going to have to show off a more versatile side of your game?
Yeah, I suppose it was a little bit hard, seeing as I had put so much effort into being that midfielder, and that was such a focus for such a long time since moving there. But yeah, I suppose you just have to draw back on the confidence that you can play in different positions. And for me, I had to go forward and sort of play a little bit taller than what I am, seeing as though we were lacking a little bit in that key position forward department. So yeah, that's the role I had to play, and that's what I had to do to try to help us win. So yeah, I was happy to do that. But in saying that as well, definitely would have liked to crack in the midfield a little bit more as well. But what can you do? Yeah.
Now, obviously, your leadership, being a captain of West Perth, coming into this and being one of the more experienced state players, obviously since 12s, it was a real blend of newcomers who haven't played any state footy to blokes who've been there since 12s, 15s, 16s, or last year. What was it like? Did you feel like you had to play a role in, I guess, bringing the new boys together, or was it just an environment where everyone just sort of gelled naturally? No one had to, I guess, force people to come out of their shell and reach out to people in, I guess, an area of discomfort?
Yeah, no, I think it was all pretty natural this year. I think, we're a bunch of, we're all pretty good blokes. So we, got along pretty quickly off the jump. We had camps and stuff like that as well. So that gave us a period where we could, get to know each other. And then, by the time we got to the end, you couldn't really tell who had played state before and who hadn't. It was all sort of just that one group that just gelled together really well.
Yeah, and as we were saying, I guess just playing that variety position, sort of trying to show your wares more forward. Is it something that I guess you really wanted to do at any stage throughout the year to pride yourself and to show clubs that you wanted to play forward, or not wanted to play forward, but wanted to show that you could play forward and could play midfield? Or was it really just, I'm an inside midfielder, I want to focus all of my energy on that this year?
No, I definitely want to show that I had the capacity to go forward and be dangerous and kick goals. Not necessarily, that might not necessarily have been to play forward for periods of games, but even as a midfielder, being able to push forward and be dangerous. But yeah, throughout the year, I was able to move forward a few times. And, I think with my skill set, I have the ability to be able to push forward and, play as that tall even, take my marks, have set shots and be really dangerous up forward as well. So yeah, that's something that I definitely wanted to show as well.
Yeah, now, away from your performance, the state carnival sucked for you because it was a string of poor luck. You played the first game against Vic Metro and it was a tough game for WA. And then the next game against the Allies, I believe you had COVID, played that game. A few boys had COVID, played that game, and then found out after that game. So you missed the next game, and then you got gastro, I believe it was, heading into the last game, which would have been at home as well for you in Joondalup. How does it, I guess, affect you mentally? It's such a big state carnival. It's the penultimate moment of your state career that you've been working towards for 6 years, and then I guess to cop that, and you're only 17, 18, and to cop that sort of, I guess, heartbreak for something you've been working towards for so long, how does that affect you mentally?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it sucked. Like, you look forward to that for the whole year and even years before that, and it's so highly regarded by so many people, all the recruiters. That's the time where you have to, show what you can do and really, really excel to, put yourself in the best position later on in the year. And like you said, I managed to play the first game. Unfortunately, we got done. And then, going in that second game, flew over to Adelaide it was. And then when we landed in Adelaide, I was feeling a little bit average. I was like, I don't know. Then
Did you just sort of keep it quiet?
Yeah, I was sort of just slept it under the carpet, real quiet. And then, woke up the morning of the game, and I was like, fuck. Sorry.
That's all right.
Like, it's not great. Felt pretty sick, to be honest. And then, warming up and then played the game. I just thought, a little cold, but nothing much. And then, flew home, felt average on the plane. And then, got home, did the test pretty much straight away and, had COVID. So, played that game with COVID. And then, so I missed the Vic Country game as well the next week. And then, I was fine, ready to go for the South Australia game here, home ground, like you said, 2 minutes away from my house. And then Friday night, just no good. Gastro,
that's
both
so
ends.
Rough.
Just,
that's so rough.
Not good. So, we were meant to have a training session that Saturday morning, preparing for the Sunday game. And, I was no good. So, had to give Jonesy the call Saturday morning and say, look.
That's like the one thing you can't play through as well, gastro.
Yeah,
There's no getting up through gastro.
No chance.
That's so rough. And I guess just to look back on, I guess, being with the boys as a whole in state footy this year, it was obviously a bit of a rough carnival, but just to be with that group, is there any moment you sort of look back on throughout the year as a moment that you, I guess, think of really fondly, or even throughout your whole state career, just any moment that you look back on more fondly than others?
Yeah, I think that first game against Vic Metro, I reckon the first half we had them. That was just like being out there. Vic Metro, they're meant to be, top of the top.
Always stacked.
Always winning, always getting a lot of boys drafted. And we genuinely had them on the ropes at half time. I think we were up by 2 or 3 goals. We definitely could have been up by more. I think, we had 25 or 26 inside 50s. They might have had 11 or 12, like genuinely on top of them. And then, obviously that feeling in that first half and coming in at half time was really good. But then, unfortunately, Sec came out in the second half and I reckon they kicked 6 or 7 on the trot and we were
and they just weren't missing either.
Nah.
They
just
could
slotting
not
them from
miss
everywhere.
at
Jefferson taking hangs, kicking bags, and then, so the first half was good, but second half, a little bit of a dampener.
Yeah, now the season for you, I guess, was highlighted with, or at least I'm saying it was highlighted with, receiving the Best and Fairest award for the Colts, the Jack Clarke Medal. how does it feel to receive that award, firstly? And I guess just going into it, you have missed a few games, but you dominated the games you did play. Beside that one game where you got injured, you were averaging like 27 touches for the season. You know you're probably in with, or do you feel like you're in with a shout, and are you sort of, I guess, not preparing, but feeling like you could win that medal on the night?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's an honour to win an award like that. I wouldn't say I didn't really expect to win it. I was sort of considering if I'd played enough games not to get the job done, because there were some other players that had some really good years as well. But yeah, got to the night, so I put up to the Sandover, and then I didn't really see any other Colts boys there, so that's when I sort of clocked on that I probably am going to win it. So yeah, obviously that was super proud moment for me.
Oh, gee, so it was given away pretty early.
Yeah.
And when you're going through that count as well, is there, what's the feeling when it gets to that point where you realise you have won it, like, especially considering a speech? I know a lot of people hate going up to give a speech. Had you, sort of started preparing a speech as the votes were going and it looked like you were going to win? Was it all just completely off the top of your head? What was, I guess, just those moments from when you realised you were going to win it to going up to giving your speech?
Yeah, well, it's actually a funny one because, like, obviously I saw I was the only one there, so I'm like, all right, I'm probably going to win it. I'm probably going to have to go up and say something. So I was, going over my head. I hadn't had anything prepared or anything. Yeah. I was just like trying to make one up like 10 minutes before I'm about to go up.
Pen and a napkin, trying to get
like
something
in my
going.
head, just trying to, just mind mapping what I'm going to say. And then I got up. So before my award got announced, I think the league leading goal kicker went up to get his award.
Yeah,
and he didn't do a speech.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, surely I'm in the clear here. Won't have to do one. So yeah, I went up and then no speech needed. So
that was
that's
huge. So clutch.
Huge. Yeah, I know. So yeah, I was happy with that.
Oh, did they do? Is it an actual count, or do they just say like the winner of?
Yeah, no, they just pulled up the votes and just said the winner.
That's a shambles. They need to give some more respect to that. Now, one thing, and I don't want to rattle you, I guess, with this information, but the Jack Clarke Medal hasn't had great success with the Colts. I'm sure you would have probably seen. I've got it here from the last 20. 7 have gone on to play AFL, and only 2 have gone on to play any more than 7 games. How does that sort of information make you feel? I mean, it's just numbers. They don't actually mean anything, but just seeing that, how do you feel, I guess, knowing that information?
Yeah, I suppose it is a little bit of a funny one. I like to sort of hope that, it's usually blokes who, blokes who play state games usually don't win it because they miss those games. So that's sort of what I'm hoping at looking at the stats. But yeah, it's a bit of a weird one, I suppose. But yeah, hopefully it's not the case for me.
Well, in good news, Kepler Bradley won it in 2002, played 117 games. Yeah. 10 years later, Dean Kent won it in 2012, has played 100 games and counting. 10 years later, you've won it. Ooh. So hopefully there's a 10-year record. Nice. And we're going to see triple figures in games from you. So hopefully that's the case. Yeah. Now, onto, I guess, a bit of a more upsetting thing from this year, the WAFL Grand Final. It's a tough one, but I'd be remiss not to bring it up. Just in the lead up to that, you've been such a dominant side. And again, you're the captain. What is that week leading up, especially from the captain's perspective, to get all the boys ready to go? You've had a week off, so you've had 2 weeks to prepare for this. What is that preparation like, especially from the captain's perspective?
Yeah, I really enjoyed the week leading up to it. We earned the break, so we had a couple of weeks. I suppose 2 weeks is a long time to sort of be sitting around and waiting for it. You sort of just want the day to come around, but just being at training and going through the process over those 2 weeks was something that I'll never forget. And then obviously the nerves start to kick in as you get closer towards it. But yeah, those 2 weeks leading up to it were great, and then obviously game was a little bit disappointing, but
we don't have to worry about that too much. But again, another thing, and you said you don't like to be the one that talks, I guess, too much. When you talk, you want to say something, but as a captain, I'm sure you have to say something before the grand final. What was your pre-game speech like to the boys about that?
Yeah, I did give a little bit of a rev up pre-game. Planned it a little bit in advance. I think you have to for a grand final. That's always the one the boys are judging the most. So yeah, it's been a long time since West Perth won. I think 1990 was the last time. So I sort of leant back on that a little bit. The 32 years since we won, I gave that a little bit of mayo. But try to give an okay rev up. I'm not sure how it went. I was a little bit rattled. I was nervous going up, so maybe the voice was getting a little bit shaky as well. But I tried my best.
Yeah, all right. Was there any specific, I guess other than that 32-year thing, was there anything like specific you were going for, like about Peel or anything like that, or was it all just really the general chat of, we can do this, it's up to us now?
Pretty standard rev up, you give the they don't want it and all that sort of stuff.
Did you have like a deputy when you were captain, like someone who was really helping you out with sort of the speeches and preparation and all that?
Yeah, well, the vice skipper, Dan Gathercole, he always chipped in with the speeches.
Oh, he would have loved a bit of the speeches as well.
He was really good. Yeah, he helped me out a fair bit.
Yep. Now, looking back on, I guess, this year, previous years, as I said, you've been sort of in this mark for a few years now. When is it that you were first approached or had spoken to an AFL club regarding this draft? And I guess, what were those sort of conversations like initially?
Yeah, so the first time I spoke to a club was earlier this year. Probably would have been April, around then. Obviously, I think I was in uni actually. I got a call. I was in a class, got a call. I'm like, oh, who's calling me now? Looked down at my number. Just some random number. So just, turned it off and whatnot.
Yeah.
And then you get a voice message afterwards. It's like AFL club, and that's obviously the first one I got. So yeah, it was pretty surreal to know that AFL clubs are looking at you and want to talk to you. So yeah, that was my first time talking to a club, and then it's just since then have spoken to a few more.
Yep, and through those conversations, I guess with clubs, with state coaches, with I guess clubs talking to your manager who's talking to you, what's one thing about your game that they've really loved, that they've said they really enjoy seeing, and what's one thing they've said they want to see a bit more of from you or want to see you do a bit better? Yeah,
I think my strengths, like everyone always says, it's the inside game, the contested ball winning, and then also another one would be the overhead marking as well as a midfielder. So yeah, I think those would be two strengths that everyone's sort of agreed with and said that they're my strengths. But then weaknesses, I've seen a fair bit about my outside game and sort of that athleticism sort of side of it. So yeah, I suppose this year a lot of it for me at West Perth especially was being that in and under player and winning the contested ball to get it out to the outsiders. But so I wasn't really able to show as much of my outside game as what I would have liked. But I definitely do think that I still have the ability to get to the outside and use my skills and be really skillful, but I just probably didn't show as much as I would have liked to this year. So yeah, I can see why they would think that might be a weakness of mine.
Yeah, now you look back on this year as a whole, and I guess for this you might say try and show more outside footy, but from everything you know now, from the benefit of hindsight, obviously you can't change that shit run you had through the state champs with poor luck, but is there anything that you changed to your approach to the season or an aspect of your game that you wish you worked harder on in the pre-season? Is there anything you'd change with the benefit of hindsight?
I reckon maybe if I would change anything, it'd probably be try maybe even get out of the midfield a little bit more. I think I was in there a fair bit this year, especially with West Perth. Even for a quarter or so every game, push forward, because I think if I showed a lot more of that, it just push me up even more, I reckon, because I think I can be really dangerous going forward. And then even going back as well, I might have liked to even go back for a game or two and show what I can do down there again, because I did play down back my first Colts in 16s and really enjoyed it, and I thought I played pretty well that year as well. So I think if I could refresh clubs on my ability to do that, I definitely would do that. So I think that's probably something that I would do if I had the year again.
Yep, and I guess just finally, what is it now, 10 days away from the draft, 7 days away from the draft, something like that. How are you feeling? It's so close. As you said, you've been thinking about it since 12, I guess, this year, and to know that you are just, days away from it. How does it all feel to know that the last, 6-7 years of the life that you've been working towards, it's coming, in the next week or so?
Yeah, I'm pretty nervous, to be honest. Yeah. It's sort of a weird one because you can't really do anything now. You've done all the work. It's a big body of work over however long. Obviously, you dream of it since you play Auskick, really. So, 15 years? This is what it's been leading up to. But at the end of the day, whether it happens or it doesn't, I won't let that define me. So, there's so many ways in now. I'll keep cracking in next year, if not this year. But, yeah, obviously, hopefully, in 10 days, the dream comes true. So, yeah, just wait and see what happens.
Well, fingers are crossed, and if records are anything to go by, you've got 100 games to go, and then someone will in 10 years' time from now. But
how good.
Bev, it's been great to have you on, throughout the year. Thank you so much for giving me your time. And, hopefully next time we speak, I'm speaking to an AFL player.
No worries, mate. Thanks for having me.